There's a terrifying truth about skinwalkers, whispered in the deserts of the Southwest, one that Native American elders refuse to speak aloud. They say there are men who traded their humanity for power. That in the black of night, they wear the flesh of beasts and run on all fours through the sagebrush. The Navajo called them the naaldlooshii. The world calls them skinwalkers. They aren't myths born from the campfire. They're reminders that evil doesn't always come from outside of the world. Sometimes it's invited in. In the endless silence of Utah's basin, stories stretch back generations. A rancher spots something loping along his fence line, tall, thin, its movements too smooth, too deliberate. Another driver sees glowing eyes reflected from the highway's edge, but when he slows, they blink and vanish, only to reappear in his rearview mirror, running alongside his truck. And always there's the same feeling, that unseen intelligence watching from just beyond the reach of the headlights. Some call these tales superstition. Others, especially those who've lived long enough to know better, call them warnings. Because to the Navajo, a skinwalker isn't a monster in the woods. It's a witch. A human being who is breaking very sacred laws, desecrating the divine order of life itself to gain power through blood, ritual, and transformation. They don't just mimic animals, they become them. The wolf, the coyote, the owl. They wear the skin of the creature as a mask, and through it shed their own humanity like dead flesh. And if you think the story is limited to the red deserts of Utah, think again. Reports of skinwalkers have surfaced as far east as the Appalachian Mountains, whispered by travelers who swore something followed them through the pines. It isn't bound to one people, one land, or one belief. Tonight, we'll pull back the veil on the terrifying truth behind skinwalkers, what they are, how they're made, and why even saying their name can draw their attention. Because there's power in words. I'm J-Rod, and this is Hollylight, where the veil is thin, the stories begin. The history of the Skinwalker. To understand the terrifying truth of the Skinwalker, you first have to understand the world it was born from. Long before Skinwalker Ranch or UFO sightings made headlines, the Navajo people spoke quietly of those who walk the dark path, the naaldlooshii, literally meaning, with it, he goes on all fours. In Navajo belief, balance is everything. Life is harmony. Hoza, a sacred rhythm that keeps man, earth, and spirit in alignment. To break that balance is to invite chaos. And the naaldlooshii represents the ultimate act of corruption. A skinwalker isn't born evil. It's made through deliberate, profane acts. Taboos so severe that even speaking of them risks summoning the darkness behind them. The stories say a person seeking power must first murder someone close, a sibling, a parent, a spouse, a child. That blood sacrifice severs their connection to humanity. From there they learn the forbidden songs and rites that twist flesh and spirit together, giving them the ability to take on the form of animals, the coyote, the wolf, the owl. Creatures seen as messengers of death. They wear the hides of these animals, sometimes even their skulls, as both disguise and conduit. Through the ritual, they don't just look like the creature, they become it. Every movement, every instinct sharpened, but with one horrific cost. Their soul is no longer their own. Among the Navajo, to name one aloud is to call its attention. That's why you'll rarely hear the word Skinwalker spoken openly. Instead, they speak around it in warnings, in silence, in gestures, because they believe it hears and it listens. Outsiders often reduce this belief to witchcraft or superstition, but to the Navajo, it's far deeper. It's a spiritual truth. That power sought outside the Creator's order always demands a price. Across the Southwest, the legends shift in small ways. Some say the transformation is done through ritualistic masks, others through powers made from human bone and ash, but the constant is always the same. A skinwalker is a human who chose to abandon light for power, and in doing so, became a vessel for something darker. As time moved on and settlers spread west, the old stories clung to the desert winds. Whispers of strange creatures in the night merged with newer tales. A cursed stretch of land near Fort Duquesne, Utah, where the Navajo and Ute tribes once warred. According to Ute oral history, the land itself became tainted after acts of betrayal and broken trust. Even now, they call that valley the path of the Skinwalker. Those who have seen these beings say they're not just confined to the canyons. They move, following roads, watching travelers, appearing on distant ridgelines beneath a full moon. And sometimes what looks like a stray dog on the roadside turns its head a little too humanly. Whether you believe they're witches, spirits, or manifestations of pure evil, the Skinwalker legend stands as one of the most chilling intersections between faith, fear, and forbidden power. Because once the door to that kind of darkness is opened, it doesn't close. The theory behind the Skinwalker. If skinwalkers were only stories meant to scare children into obedience, then they would have probably faded centuries ago, but they haven't. The sightings continue, not only in Utah's deserts, but across reservations, highways, and even wooded hollers thousands of miles away. And the question that we have is, why? Maybe it's because the Skinwalker legend describes something we still recognize in the human heart, a hunger that never went away. To the Navajo, the Skinwalker wasn't simply a witch. It was the embodiment of a soul that had turned inward, devouring itself for power. Someone who looked at creation and said, I can do better. And doesn't this sound familiar? That same voice whispered in Eden. In the echo of pride, it's the belief that man can seize the divine, bend it to his will, and become something more than mortal. But power taken without permission always comes with a curse. And what if that curse still lingers? What if skinwalkers aren't monsters in the sense of teeth and fur, but in spiritual distortions, echoes of the Watcher's rebellion? Beings that show us what happened when flesh and spirit are twisted together outside of God's design. Some researchers claim the legend represents ancient experiments, a kind of forgotten hybridization between man and beast. Others believe skinwalkers are shapeshifters in the most literal sense. Humans possessed by something demonic that wears the body like a mask. Both ideas share one terrifying thread, however. That transformation always begins with invitation. To become a skinwalker, one must ask for it. One must give consent. That's what separates it from random haunting or possession. It's willful corruption. And once that door is opened, it doesn't close easily. People who've lived on the reservation say that the ground remembers, that areas where skinwalkers perform their profane rituals remain tainted for generations. Animals avoid them. dreams become strange, and shadows move differently. It's as though the very fabric of the world was scarred by the act of unmaking our humanity. In some ways, the Skinwalker is less a creature and more a contagion. A spiritual virus that infects the land, the air, and anyone who listens too long to the wrong kind of story. And maybe that's why these encounters feel so heavy. Witnesses don't just describe seeing something impossible. They describe feeling it. A pressure in the air, like a storm that doesn't break. An intelligence behind the eyes of an animal that shouldn't be there. An overwhelming sense that they've been noticed by something that understands exactly what they are and what they fear. So perhaps the real problem isn't whether skinwalkers exist, but whether the darkness that made them has found new ways to manifest. Whether the same pride, the same lust for hidden knowledge still whispers to people today, promising control, transformation, and power. Because if the Skinwalker myth is more than a legend, then it's a warning that no matter the culture, no matter the time, when man tries to steal the power of creation, something ancient and terrible answers the call. Spiritual and biblical parallels with the Skinwalker. Every culture has its monsters, but not every monster has a soul. When you strip away the desert sand and the tribal names, the story of the Skinwalker starts to sound eerily familiar, an echo of something far older, written in the earliest pages of Scripture. In Genesis 6, the world trembles under the corruption of the Watchers, the fallen angels who had abandoned their heavenly post and defiled mankind by mixing what was holy with what was forbidden. They created hybrids, abominations, the Nephilim, creatures of strength and terror that were never meant to exist. Now think about the Skinwalker, a human who chooses to fuse spirit with beast, to break the boundary between creation and creature. It's the same rebellion, just in a different form. Every act of transformation described in the old Navajo stories requires an act of will, an agreement. It's covenant language, and covenant always comes with blood. In the Bible, covenant blood restores, but in witchcraft it corrupts. The Skinwalker's ritual, the murder of kin and the wearing of flesh, is a twisted mirror of sacrifice. Instead of communion with the Creator, it becomes communion with chaos. That's why so many who study this phenomenon say that the presence of the Skinwalker feels more demonic than animal. Because if demons are spirits seeking bodies, then Skinwalkers are bodies that invited spirits in. Even in the New Testament, we see glimpses of possession that distort flesh. The man among the tombs in the country of the Gadarenes, cutting himself, living in isolation, howling into the night among the graves. No one could bind him. Chains couldn't hold him. When Jesus approached, the Spirit spoke through him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." That moment revealed the nature of evil. It seeks embodiment, expression, and flesh. Now imagine if a person asked for that. Imagine what walks the earth when man willingly surrenders his form to the thing that waits beyond the veil. It's no wonder why so many Navajo elders speak in hushed tones about skinwalkers. Not because they fear the stories, but because they recognize the truth behind them. They understand that to speak a name is to acknowledge its existence. An acknowledgement gives power. Throughout the Bible, God warns of those who call upon the spirits for knowledge or strength. From Saul's visit to the witch of Endor to the prophets condemning those who consult the dead on behalf of the living. Every act of forbidden power, every shadow ritual follows the same pattern. Man reaching into darkness for light, and what he finds isn't holy. And maybe this is why the modern Skinwalker accounts are steeped in dread. It's not just fear of what's seen, it's recognition. The ancient curse still works because human pride still answers its call. The same rebellion that began before the flood, the same fall that cast down angels, now hides in the form of something with yellow eyes and a familiar voice that whispers your name from the tree line. So when the Bible says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, maybe this is what it means. That the war between heaven and hell still plays out in the hearts of those who open the wrong doors. Witness accounts of Skinwalkers. If the Skinwalker were only a story, it should have died with the campfires that first told it. But it didn't. It keeps showing up on ranches, on highways, and in the nightmares of those who've seen the impossible. In the Uinta Basin of Utah, there is a ranch whose very soul seems to hum with secrets. Locals call it Skinwalker Ranch. The first modern owners, Terry and Gwen Sherman, said it started small, a shadow moving along the fence line. Cattle found mutilated in ways no predator could explain. Then came the lights, orbs of fire that floated through the fields, dodging bullets like they were alive. And something big stalked the property, massive, silent, with eyes that burned red when hit by a flashlight. One night, it reached through a corral and tore a 200-pound steer apart in seconds. When investigators arrived, they found the creature's tracks, but they ended mid-field, as if it had simply vanished. Later, the ranch was purchased by a billionaire obsessed with uncovering the truth. Teams of scientists, soldiers, and engineers moved in with cameras and radiation meters. They caught strange heat signatures, unexplained magnetic spikes, and voices and frequencies below human hearing. Yet every time the camera turned toward something tangible, they failed, as if the phenomenon itself was watching them. Further south, across the Navajo Nation, encounters take a darker, quieter form. A grandmother wakes to scratching on the door of her trailer. Through the thin aluminum, a voice whispers her name, her real name, spoken in the tone of her long-dead brother. When she opens the door, the desert is empty. Only coyote tracks lead away, but they walked on two legs. Another man tells of driving home late from Gallup one night when something ran across the road ahead of him. It was shaped like a man, but wrong, too thin and too fast. When his headlights hit it, the creature dropped to all fours and sprinted away with a speed that no human could match. He said the smell of rot followed him all the way home. And then there are the reports from Appalachia. Deep in the Smoky Mountains, hunters have told of seeing figures with elongated limbs and dog-like faces that mimic human voices from the trees. A West Virginia family said that they heard their own dog barking outside after they'd buried it the week before. When they looked out of the window, something was standing in the yard, watching the house. It wore the dog's skin like a cloak, but by the time they'd grabbed a flashlight, it was gone. Only prints remained in the mud, not paws, but bare human feet, with claws for toes. Skeptics say these accounts are mass hysteria, tricks of light, folklore shaped by fear, but those who've seen it swear they weren't just looking at an animal. They were being looked at, like something ancient was measuring them, studying their soul from beyond those eyes. Even modern investigators admit there's a pattern they can't explain. Where these sightings occur, radiation spikes Animals start to panic, and equipment fails, and people change, as if the land itself remembers what walked there so long ago. Maybe the Skinwalker legend never died because the evil behind it never died. Maybe what we're seeing in the desert, in the mountains, and on those lonely roads isn't a new monster at all, but an old one, still wearing different faces. And maybe the reason it keeps watching is because we keep looking for it. Light the lantern. There's a reason the Skinwalker legend refuses to die. It's not just the fear, it's the truth that hides beneath it. Every story, every witness account, there's a pattern. Someone reaches for power they were never meant to hold, then something answers. It comes quietly, wrapped in shadows and promises. And by the time they realize what it's cost them, it's too late. Maybe that's why the old ones warned us to be careful what we speak aloud, because words are doors. And once open, not everything that steps through can go back. When I think about the Skinwalker, I don't just see a monster running through the desert. I see what happens when humanity loses sight of its purpose, when the hunger for control replaces the call to serve others. That's not a Navajo problem or an Appalachian problem. That's a human problem. Every act of rebellion, every fall from grace starts the same way. It's a choice. And the naaldlooshii isn't just a warning from one culture. It's a message carved into the human story itself. That when we try to become gods, we end up becoming beasts. But the good news is, the hope, is that darkness never gets the last word, because light exposes, truth restores, and grace heals even what we thought was too far gone. If Skinwalkers do walk among us, maybe their presence isn't just a curse, maybe it's a reminder that there's a war going on, a spiritual war, one not fought with bullets or science, but with faith, prayer, and obedience. The kind of weapons that makes evil tremble, not because they're loud, but because they're eternal. And if you ever find yourself on a lonely road and you feel those eyes watching you from the tree line, remember this, that evil hides in darkness because it fears the light. If you have a story, a real encounter, a family tale, or a glimpse of the veil, send it in. You might just hear your story on a future episode. And if you've made it this far in the video, drop the Veil Watchers in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe for more tales from the Veil. God bless, stay prayed up, and remember, some lights are meant to guide you home while others are warnings.